Welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. Kay Murray and Shaka Hislop here with you, and we're going to start the show by talking about the Nations League and heading into League A Group 3, where all four of these teams were in action against one another. England lost 1-0 to Italy. Germany suffered their first defeat under Hansi Flick to Hungary, also a 1-0 result there. And with England, things are looking pretty bad right now. They are relegated from the Nations League top flight. They will be playing their football in League B next time in this tournament. Just taking a look at the papers, no wins, no goals, no idea, down and out, don't seem to be able to score from open play to Gareth Southgate's men, and there's a few concerns. It's 3 straight games without a goal for the first time since 2000, 450 minutes without a goal from open play, 5 straight games without a win. That hasn't happened since 2014, and as mentioned, they are now relegated from Nations League Group A. Let's now welcome in Julian Aron and Stuart Robson, but let's tell you first of all what the reaction was from the England players. Declan Rice said, "I've seen it in training. We score goals for fun. Trust me, we're going to be good." Gareth Southgate as well didn't seem too concerned. He said, "It's difficult for me to be too critical of the performance. We had more possession, more shots on target. I thought there were a lot of positives for us as a team tonight. I thought the performance is a step in the right direction. I completely understand because of the results, that is not going to be the reaction." All right, Stuart Robson, it all seems okay if you're listening to Declan Rice and Gareth Southgate there. So what is your reaction?
First of all, let's say that Italy, if that's the best side that Italy can put out, then England are struggling because it's a poor Italy side. And England did not know how to play out from the back, how to get it into the front players. And there was 2 players I was more disappointed with than anybody else. And that was Sterling down the left-hand side and Foden down the right-hand side. They were playing in behind Harry Kane. And time again, they were man-marked by Cherby down one side and Toloi down the other side. They came back towards the ball, received the ball with their back to goal, then passed it back to the centre-half, lost it, and didn't seem to know how to receive the ball with their back to goal and get themselves turned. So that was one point. The midfield players, Bellingham made 1 or 2 forward runs, but England didn't know how to play around the pressure. They didn't have the understanding how to get their wide centre-halves to come out with the ball when they had chance to play round the back. The wing-backs didn't get high enough up the field because they didn't get good enough possession in and around the front. It was a poor performance all round. And for Gareth Southgate to say it was an OK performance, I think that's shocking, really, because it just lacked creativity, it lacked invention, it lacked know-how. And Harry Kane, if those players were being tightly marked, he had to spin down the side of Bonucci because there was so much space and they just didn't see it. Either the players on the ball or the players in the front areas didn't see what was on.
Jules, Ian Dark, our colleague, said you would need a vivid imagination to think England could win the World Cup after tonight's performance. Do you agree with him?
Yes, and not just after tonight. I mean, you said it earlier, five games now without a win, 5 games where they only scored 1 penalty. So there's clearly a problem in creativity, like Shu just said. And so you have to explain to me why you play Bukayo Saka as a left wing back. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There's no direction, no idea to that team. Why is, I don't know, Trent Alexander-Arnold staying on the bench for the whole game? But maybe you can just say, why is Southgate waiting the 70th minute and once you 1 goal down to start to make his changes in Luke Shaw and Jack Grealish was the other one, which again, I think we can even debate the quality of not just the timing, but also the quality of the changes. I think it was a terrible performance once again from Southgate. I think for him to come out with those comments after the game is complete denial, and I think I find it baffling, really. If he really thinks this was a lot of positives, even compared to previous matches, he's completely going in the wrong direction, and I think this is part of the problem. Is if he doesn't realise himself how bad his team has been playing for the last 5 games, then I think England are in really, really big trouble.
Is he too set in his ways, Southgate, Stuart?
Too set in his ways. I don't think for me, all along, since he's been the manager, he doesn't understand the game tactically. when things are going wrong. He doesn't know how to rectify it. We've seen that in the semi-final against Croatia when it was obvious that their wing-backs were getting forward or their full-backs were getting crosses into the box. He had to stop that and change the system. He didn't do that. In the game against Italy in the final of the European Championships, when they were 1-0 up and should have dominated the game, they sat back and they allowed Italy to dominate possession. He got it wrong then. And he doesn't know how to change things when things are going badly. Today, he should have been saying to Foden and Sterling, keep spinning in behind. Get in behind a chirp. He can't run. He's 35. Get in behind Toller. He's good when he's coming onto the ball, but he's not good when he's running in behind. He didn't change it. I mean, he changed it to a back four with, as Jules just said, when they went 1-0 down, too late. He's just not a good manager, in my view.
Oh, it's interesting, though, isn't it, Shaka? Because then you look at the previous major tournaments that Gareth Southgate's been the manager in, and it's been a good run for England.
It's been a good run, but I think it came almost unexpectedly in some regards. And a lot has been made. And at the time, I felt unfairly around England's route to semi-final and final in the last two major tournaments. But given what you've seen since Euros, I'm not sure how you feel any sense of optimism going into this tournament. And just to echo something that Stuart just said, this was by no stretch of anybody's imagination a good Italy performance either. Yet, as this game went on, you only felt it was going to go one way. You talk about, and Stuart mentioned Gareth Southgate and his deficiencies tactically. You have an Italian rearguard that lacks pace. There's no other way to put it. You have Sterling and Foden. At no point do England get the wrong side of Italy's defence today. Italy just sat back, soaked the pressure. You knew what they were going to do. Look for those opportunities on the counter-attack. But at no point were England able to make either the guile of Foden or the pace of Sterling count positively for them to threaten the Italians in any kind of measure. If you see that performance, if you see England's inability to do that to a poor Italy team and inability to adjust, which I think is the biggest ask in a World Cup, when you're playing against teams from different confederations and you are asking to play different styles, and you cannot adjust in a game like this England game against Italy, it really doesn't fill you with an awful lot of confidence. It's not a tough group, the group stage for England in the World Cup, and maybe the way things pan out, England find themselves with an easy draw and things just start to click all of a sudden. But going into this tournament, I'm not sure that you feel overly positive at all.
What other concerns do you have, Robbo?
You've got players that are playing without confidence at the moment. Harry Maguire, I've always said is a good player coming out with the ball. He didn't want to come out with the ball today and said it was too late because he doesn't want to make mistakes. He's made so many mistakes for Manchester United. He was booed by England supporters at Wembley. So he wants to just get through the game without making mistakes. And he looked edgy. So you want him to play with more confidence and defend better. Eric Dyer, Walker got most of the criticism for the goal, and quite rightly so, but Eric Dyer was almost playing as a sweeper and playing 10, 15 yards behind everybody else. He could have come onto the ball when that ball was played over the top. So they've got to be better organised and have a better understanding of what they're trying to do from the first minute to the last minute, both defensively and in attack. And Pope, the goalkeeper, to me, doesn't look, probably he won't be in goal for the World Cup, he won't be their starter, but doesn't look comfortable with the ball at his feet, which is a problem as well.
Jules, have you got anything to add?
No, I just would like please to make the parallel between Gareth Southgate and Raymond Domenech, who's the worst head coach that France have ever had, despite reaching a World Cup final. And I see a lot of similarities with Gareth Southgate.
Robbo liked that. Do you like that one, Robbo?
That says everything. That says everything, doesn't it? Domenech was at least Gareth Southgate's a good man manager. I don't think Domenech was a good man manager. I think Jules would admit that.
True. True.
Let's move on to talk about Germany. They lost their first game under Hansi Flick. A famous victory it was for Hungary. What did you make of them then tonight, Jules?
Well, they defended really well, Hungary, you have to say, and they were super efficient, although they could have scored maybe one or two more towards the end of the game when Germany was just pushing players forward to try to find an equalizer. but they scored a very special goal, and I think they scored 6 goals now in the game against Germany and England on an expected goals of 2.7. So they clearly, boxing above their weight in terms of efficiency and how clinical they've been and how well they've taken their chances. But to go to Germany and win like that, and now to have this final against Italy to win this group and qualify for the Final Four is an amazing achievement for this group of players that we saw at the Euros with some really good things. There's some talent there. There's also very solid. They can defend well. And we saw them in the second half tonight when Germany were putting on the pressure. They rode their luck a little bit, but they also defended really, really well. And it's, this is just, they took their chances so well through these tournaments, through these nation leagues in a very, very tough group with Germany, England and Italy. And they deserve that final against Italy to try to go through to the Final Four.
After the game, Hansi Flick, Shaka, talked about what he got wrong tonight, basically, some things that he would try. And given the fact that we are looking at these games in the build-up to the World Cup, which manager's approach do you like better to that? Do you like a manager who comes out and says, this wasn't right tonight, this is what we got wrong? Or do you prefer a Southgate who's like, everything's okay, everything's fine?
No, absolutely. Hansi Flick's approach is more honest and I think resonates better, not just with the fans, but with the players as well. Because make no mistake about it, Germany was second best against Hungary today. And yes, there was some good fortune about the goal coming from a set piece, but it was deserved. Hungary attacked with a sense of confidence, and maybe it's a confidence from sitting top of the group and you're not worried about relegation, especially when you see the draw and who you're up against. But they, especially in that first half, attacked with a sense of confidence, and they deserved their goal. They deserved the win. But if you're Germany, if you're Hansi Flick, and you see that you're second best, you have to come out and address that. You saying otherwise, I don't think helps anybody. Maybe it avoids some criticism in the press, in some quarters, maybe, but I don't think it serves. It serves the players, given what they've just endured. I don't think it does any justice with the fans in terms of what they've just witnessed. So that, I think, especially this close to a tournament, you can paper over the cracks 18 months or 2 years before the next major tournament. But when you're 2 months away, you have to be honest in your assessment. You have to be honest in what you're saying to the players in particular. If the takeaway, during that comparison with England again, and to Declan Rice's comments, if the takeaway is, yeah, we'll be all right because we play really well in training, I'm sorry. Sorry,
if I could just come in there. What I'd say, Shaka, is can Gareth Southgate actually say what went wrong? Because he doesn't actually know what went wrong. That could be his big problem. Hansi Flick's a good coach and says, I made this mistake, we didn't do that particularly well, we should have done that better. I don't think Gareth Southgate knows why they didn't play well today. He actually thinks they played okay because they probably carried out his instructions, but there was no creativity. He couldn't understand why they couldn't get in behind Italy. He couldn't read the game. And that's my criticism every time I see him manage when they're struggling. He doesn't read the game well enough.
I wouldn't mind seeing those training sessions, though, because I will just say before we finish this segment that Southgate himself said of Harry Maguire, he seems to be in a good place in training. So it seems that everything's absolutely wonderful in England training at the moment. Anyway, there'll be more talk about the Nations League on tomorrow's show. Make sure you join us then as we look at Spain with Luis Garcia. And I know our Stuart Robson is looking forward to seeing Spain in the World Cup. Brazil were in action against Ghana. 3-0 it finished. Seleção unbeaten in over a year now. Goals from Marquinhos and a double from Richarlison, the first of his goals. Absolutely wonderful stuff. Brazil doing absolutely nothing to quash their tag as one of the favourites coming this World Cup. I know, Shaka, that you were super impressed with what you saw. Jules and Robbo still with us, but let's start with just how impressed you were, Shaka. In fact, so much so that I know in your power rankings you've been saying Argentina are your favourites, but you might be changing your mind somewhat.
Yeah, I've been saying Argentina for some time, just given what we've seen of them of late, particularly in big tournaments, and I'm thinking of the Copa America specifically, where I thought they were outstanding, winning on Brazilian soil. But you see Brazil play against Ghana today, and goodness me, you have to second guess them even being second. They were 3-0 at halftime was flattering to the Ghanaians. It quite easily could have been 5 or 6. Second half just fizzled out. But Brazil really were that special. The only concern is if they're under a little bit of pressure, how they stand up. Do they have enough metal about them? But in pure footballing terms, I don't think I've seen many better teams. But I'm sticking with Argentina.
But let's just talk a little bit about Neymar, Jules, because he was playing in a deeper role in this game, but he still carried that sensational form that he's had for PSG into it.
Yes, you're right. I thought he was outstanding, certainly for the first half, which, like Shaka said, was very, very special. I mean, the football they played in Ghana were not very good, and they lost Thomas Partey before the game, and they played tactically. I think Otto Addo, the head coach, got it wrong, and they were far too exposed to everything. Okay, fair enough, but still, Brazil were outstanding in the way they moved the ball, and they played with no right back really, because Dembele was playing as a right back. So it was just so entertaining, so free-flowing. The movement was non-stop. It was just beautiful to watch, really. And Neymar was at the heart of pretty much everything good they did. And his relationship with Vinicius Junior is getting better and better and better. His relationship with Lucas Paqueta has always been very, very strong. And at times, I think Brazil will play with Casemiro and another more sort of defensive-minded central midfielder instead of Paqueta tonight. But against teams like that, where you know you're going to have a lot of the ball, then it makes also sense to just have Casemiro, and then the rest is basically attacking players. I think what we saw tonight as well is you understand maybe why there's no room for Gabriel Martinelli and Gabriel Jesus in that squad, because they're so good going forward, attacking-wise, that you wonder who you would have to drop to make room for the two Arsenal players.
Yeah, they've got such a wealth of options, Robbo. It really is hard to bet against them, especially when you see their form as a national team coming into the World Cup as well.
And when they're playing well, they've got great spirit. You know, they look as though they enjoy playing the game. They enjoy each other's company. They look as though they're a team that are, at the moment are playing the best football they possibly can. And that wasn't their best side they probably had out today. They could bring other players in. So I think they're certainly a side to watch at the World Cup. I think they're going to be there or thereabouts. Argentina, likewise, I think could be there. But Brazil, for me, just at the moment, are the favourites.
And does Jesus come in for Richarlison, Jules?
Well, we used to say that this is the squad that you have to be in, really, to make the World Cup squad. And it's the same for every single country, and especially the big countries, where there's so much focus on the last squad before the official one for the World Cup, which will be next month, really. That if you're missing on the last squad before the competition, then it's really hard to get back into it. It's not a cliche, this is the way it is. And you will see, I think, a lot of those big countries, the 25 or 26 that they've taken in this international break, there's 90% chances that it will be exactly the same, bar injuries, of course, that they will take to the World Cup. So not being in this one, I think, was a huge blow for Gabriel Jesus and Gabriel Martinelli, especially then when you see the firepower that this Brazilian team has, which is it's not new, but when they play like that together, Rafinha, Richarlison, Neymar and Vinicius tonight were so good that you think, okay, yeah, you can take Gabriel Jesus and it might be as good as Richarlison tonight, or Gabriel Martinelli might be another good option instead of Rafinha and Vinicius in the last 20 minutes or again 15 minutes. But you could also easily say, well, the 6 that Tichy had selected for this international break are perfectly fine, and you don't need Gabriel Jesus and Gabriel Martinelli either. So unless they have really outstanding performances with Arsenal in the next 4 weeks now to regain that place in the squads, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to make the World Cup, unfortunately.
You know, that's a very good point. I think coming into this game, you can quite easily make the argument for Martinelli and in particular Gabriel Jesus over Richarlison. I think that was a very easy argument to make. But you see this performance today. You see Richarlison and how he functions as the out-and-out striker in front, in that Brazil attack. And given that performance, I'm not sure what either Jesus or Martinelli can do for Arsenal that puts them ahead of Richarlison come the World Cup. Because the understanding, the chemistry of Brazil's attack really was something to witness.
Okay, well, these 3 players, I'll call you all players, Jules, Robbo and Shaka, will be answering your questions on the latest edition of Extra Time. You can check that out over on our YouTube page.
Gives the ball away and players colliding left, right and centre. Ronaldo keeps his feet. Great strength by the Brazilian. He's left 3 players in his wake. He's kept his feet. This will be a wonderful goal. Oh, it is! That is world class! Absolute genius from the young Brazilian. A wonderful goal. Absolutely wonderful. And Bobby Robson, who's seen virtually everything in his time, stands up and applauds.
Never gets old. But the man himself has got 1 year older, and our Alejandro Moreno said, OG Ronaldo, the best. Happy birthday. It was his birthday this week. It got lots of people talking about him, as always, sharing his best goals. On the greatest player ever, Paolo Maldini, speaking on the documentary about Ronaldo, said the 3 greatest players I saw during my career were Messi, Maradona and Ronaldo, R9 Ronaldo. And so, high praise there. We wonder, though, if he has made Shaka's top 5 power rankings of the best players ever.
Best players ever.
Best players ever.
Not just during Maldini's career. He's made the top 5. 5th, Cristiano Ronaldo, and I know this may upset Cristiano Ronaldo fans that he's that low, but I just don't have him ahead of Lionel Messi, and that may upset Lionel Messi fans that he's not number 1. But you know how I feel about Messi, or you know how I feel about the top 3. I thought Maradona dictated the game in his generation in a way that not many else have. At number 2, Brazilian Ronaldo, I thought at his best was unplayable, and but for injuries, maybe we're having a different discussion. Number 1 for me still has to be Pele. 3 World Cups speaks for itself. I know people will speak about his domestic career. No real need to leave Brazil. He was getting paid better there than he would have in Europe. So why move? And there is nobody who comes anywhere close to emulating that record of 3 World Cups. He gets number 1.
Jules and Robbo still here. Robbo, what do you think of Shaka's power rankings?
I fully agree with them. There's 2 players that I loved as a youngster and I wanted to be like, would be Johan Cruyff and Franz Beckenbauer. But they're probably not in the top 5. They might have been close, Shaka, but I agree with your top 5. Outstanding players who could change any game.
Jules?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with the 5 that Shaka picked. I mean, I'm much younger than Robbo and Shaka, so they saw Pele play. I didn't really, but on tape. I'm kidding. But yeah, I mean, I would have Maradona as my number 1. But yeah, those 5s are just incredible. And I think the others, the one that Robbo mentioned, Cruyff, Beckenbauer, you could put Zidane, Platini maybe, and others would be close. But I think that
you
top
had to
5
throw a
is
couple of Frenchmen in there, didn't you, Jules? You had to throw a couple of Frenchmen in there. Of all the players you could have mentioned, it had to be Frenchmen.
Of course, and Copa as well, that you probably saw play as well, considering your age.
Robbo, where's the love for the English players?
Well, I don't think we've ever produced I mean, Paul Gascoigne was probably the most talented player we've produced. Bobby Charlton obviously was an excellent player. Bobby Moore as a centre-half, but they can't compare with those 5 that Shaka's just mentioned, or Franz Beckenbauer, or Johan Cruyff, who I loved.
I almost feel like we should quit while we're ahead, because for once, Shaka, nobody's upset with one of your power rankings.
Yeah, well, it's a very small group, by the way. It's a very small sample group, but I'll take it.
Okay, so top 5, everyone's happy with it. Let's quit while we are ahead. Make sure you do head on over to
never doing top
YouTube
5s ever
page.
again.
Whenever you do see his power rankings over on there, you'll see there is usually a big dispute about them. Subscribe while you're there, please. It's the USA who were in friendly action this morning against Japan. And it's fair to say that if this was a tune-up game, the one thing we did find as we welcome Casey Keller in is that they're looking pretty out of tune at the moment. Casey, I feel as though this performance actually left us with more questions than answers.
Well, I think some of the questions that were answered was that this isn't good enough, and that if this is the standard, the way the team's going to play in a very easy group, they're going to make it very difficult for themselves. I mean, the inability to keep the ball in trying to play out of the back just kept gifting opportunities to Japan. There's the example of the one they took in the first half, but there were multiple chances. Japan was just better across the board on pretty much everything they wanted to do. In possession, in the way they pressed as a unit, the ability to run at players and take players on and create chances. And look, the one bright spot, Matt Turner had a good game. If he doesn't have a good game, this could have very possibly been 3, 4, or 5 and really gotten away. Now, the part where that possession stat is so misleading is that all of the U.S.'s possession was with their center backs deep in their own half. Their inability to work the ball from the back into the attacking third of the field and then create chances out of it was astonishing. And then the fact that they didn't change. They didn't think, okay, we're struggling playing out of the back. Let's play a little bit more direct. Let's win second balls in the final third. Let's just do what the U.S. has done the best over the years, is compete and be the tough, good tenacity, really kind of press teams at times. Nope, we'll continue to do the same thing, do it poorly, and fortunately Japan only beat them by 2.
Yeah, they failed to register a single shot on target, Casey. Didn't they want to play a high-tempo possession style? Isn't that the whole point?
Well, you got to actually keep the ball to play possession. They gave the ball away so often in midfield, you really had no time to get players in further advanced positions. And then the rare occasions that they did, I think they were so afraid of giving the ball away that then it went backwards and square. And in the end, they had one good move in the 7th minute. Serginho Dest with a good move down the right, a good ball in, Ferreira heads over. Look, we know that Dest, his strength is going forward, but then on the goal, we saw that he was out of position and there was a ton of space. Here's the opportunity. Yes, it's a good little run. This is what Dest does best. Look, that needs to be headed on target. That's clear. But then on the other side, we saw the frailties of Serginho Dest on the defensive side. Was that, look at the acres of space in that left-hand channel where Japan then just sweeped in the first goal. So, it's going to be interesting to see what adjustments Gregg makes for the second game and how they're able to really kind of rebound from this kind of embarrassing result for the U.S. You don't have many games. You have one game left. Maybe they'll try to squeeze in, some sort of makeshift game before the tournament. But, that's left a lot of question marks, as you said, Kay.
Well, obviously, there's going to be some injured players as well in this one. But one player they can't have, Casey, is Jordan Pefok. Why didn't he call him up?
It's a really good question. Gregg will say things that he doesn't necessarily fit into the style or the system that we're trying to play. Well, whatever the system was today, that didn't work. But, Pefok has started his life in the Bundesliga very well for Union Berlin. And, as you know, as a national team coach, you don't have the ability to go out in the transfer market and pick the players that fit your system best. You're stuck with the players that have passports. And if Pefok right now was one of the hottest players with just, a couple months before the World Cup, I'm a little bit surprised that he wasn't brought in at least. I think you can name as many people as you want to a training squad. Bring him in, see what he looks like. If you want to name him to a match squad, so be it. But I'm surprised that when players were available that you didn't bring him in to at least have a look. And obviously, the striker position has been something that has been an issue for the U.S. for some time now. And to have a guy in form in one of the top leagues in the world and not be called in, that was pretty perplexing to a lot of people.
Now, obviously, there's some injured players as well, Shaka. Does it matter losing in a friendly like this when there is one World Cup game left to play, one game before the World Cup left to play?
On the face of it, no. It's a friendly. You will be judged on what happens in the World Cup. But with so many questions around the U.S. national team, around how they fare, especially given they're missing out on a World Cup 4 years ago, I think this performance has left Berhalter with more problems than solutions, with more unknowns than what he's actually going to discuss. And as much as you talk about the inclusion of PFOC or the omission, however you want to look at it, we always knew coming into this World Cup tournament, or started if he comes into this tournament, that the striker position would be one that would be a problem, and then just kind of given Matt Turner's move to Arsenal and Zach Steffen and his uncertain form, given the US's goalkeeping situation for as far back as I can remember, that was going to be the issue. But then you look at this, and the only player who comes out of it able to hold his head with any dignity out of it at all is Matt Turner. And as a result, as much as you're talking about where the problem positions may be, it's everywhere but between the sticks at this moment. And Casey's right. I sat watching this game, and as it started, I did not hear any of the names that you would expect. Aronson, given the ground that he covers and the pace of his play. Gio Reyna, I can only recall his name being called in delivering set pieces. I heard far too much of the back four, and none of it particularly good during the course of the commentary in the game. And as the game developed, and I'm sitting there waiting for the US to have a moment, to take some kind of grasp of the game, I go and pull up the FIFA rankings to see how Japan is so much better. Japan are 10 places below the US in the FIFA rankings, yet at no point in this game did the US look like they were able to match them in any single department. And I'm not sure when I've been able to say that about anybody, regardless of the discrepancy in opponent or position, league or FIFA, where one team does not have any kind of a spell to at least make you think that they can compete.
Can we factor in that then, Casey, that there were some players injured in this that may have made a difference?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, when you're looking at players like Pulisic and Musa and Weah, and yeah, there's some good players that weren't there. But to me, it was more of the issue of the idea of under a very well organized Japanese side, that you could see that they knew what their plan was. There was that first entry pass out of the back, find an opportunity to press. Okay, if they beat that press, drop back, and then establish, your line of confrontation from there. And the U.S. really, really struggled playing out of these situations. And again, obviously, it led to the goal, but there were so many other chances. And again, it's a situation where you have those days. You have those days where plan A doesn't work. And obviously, the idea of passing the ball inside your own 18 from the goalkeeper, your center backs combine, link up with the midfield. The midfield then is able to find a channel to then establish possession in your opponent's half. Well, it didn't work. It didn't work at all from minute one until the end of the match. And there's nothing wrong with changing that. You're going to have those days. That might be your ultimate goal, but you found a team that kind of had your number on the day. I know it was a little bit of a sticky pitch and it was a little awkward to play out of. So do something different. You bring in Josh Sargent, you bring in Jordan Morris in the second half. Jordan Morris, we've seen his pace at times be able to really unlock defenses. Josh Sargent never stops running. He keeps working and working and working. So bypass midfield, get in behind the Japanese defense. Turn them over, make them face their goalkeeper, rash clearances, win second balls in midfield. Nope, we're going to continue to pass out of the back, give the ball away in midfield, and never really establish anything in our opponent's half. And to me, that's the most frustrating thing. Yes, you're going to have off days on whatever your game plan is, but it's how you adjust. It's how players adjust. Yes, coaches are important, but also players. Look, this player keeps giving the ball in midfield. All right, let's bypass him. Let's see if then he can just win a tackle somewhere in a more advanced position, link up with somebody further advanced, get some shots on target, win some set pieces, take a player on, get a Japanese player with a yellow card, do something to just change the flow, but it wasn't. It was lethargic. It was lethargic, and it was predictable, and Japan played the U.S. off the park.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what we get in Tuesday's game in Spain against Saudi Arabia. That being the last game before the World Cup actually begins for them. Their opener is against Wales. That game's coming up on November 21st. We're 8 weeks away from the World Cup, Casey. Are they getting out of the group?
Well, now what they have going for them is they have a country in Iran that is imploding at the moment. You have Wales, who've lost 6 games in a row. So it's not all doom and gloom by any means because of this poor performance. So they've got the benefit of a group that is very, I wouldn't necessarily say winnable, because I think clearly England are the favorite. But yeah, there's no question that the U.S., if they can just figure a couple things out, make sure that players stay fit or get fit for the World Cup, then yeah, I think they can get out of the group. But they're not making it easy for themselves.
Shaka, are you as optimistic as Casey that the US can get out of the group?
No.
And by the way, Iran beat Uruguay today.
Listen, what I saw from the US today against Japan, that does not get into the group stage of the World Cup. And you can look at Iran's situation, their political situation, and you can go one of two ways on this. It affects the team negatively, or they use that as a kind of rallying call for the national team. We know the Welsh can be dangerous, especially if you get Gareth Bale into the game playing a full 90, and we saw that in qualifiers. I know he only came off the bench against Belgium. Probably the one good thing from a US perspective is how poor, and we may get to this, how poor England have looked of late, ever since the Euros. But they are favourites to get out of the group. But other than that, I go back to my original point. Given what we saw from the US today, if there isn't some kind, and I know there are players missing, but 3 or 4 players missing does not change that performance significantly enough to suggest that they get into the group stage.
Okay, so there's been a lot of love for the goalkeeper, at least today, relatively, for Matt Turner, because we've got 2 goalkeepers on with me, so we need to balance things out a little bit. It's a game of Ask the Goalkeepers here. This is Aaron Herrera. It's in the Leagues Cup showcase. It's RSL against Atlas. Saw the keeper off his line, tried this. He's a defender, by the way. Is it on the keeper, Shaka?
That's on the keeper. That's on the keeper. I mean, it's a great strike. Let's give him that due. That is an incredible. It really is a good finish, but I'm not sure who else you blame there. As a keeper, if there's no pressure on the ball, you cannot be that close to your defense. You cannot be that high up. If a striker is pressing, well, then you can step up 3 or 4 yards. But no pressure on Herrera, you've got to drop off.
Goalkeepers Union spokesperson number 2 on the show, Casey.
Well, I mean, you have one job as a goalkeeper, and that's to keep the ball out of the back of the net. Everything else is a bonus. If you want to be a field player, then be a field player, but be in a position where you can support your defense, but you can't let a ball from 70 yards go over your head. I mean, it's simple. Take nothing away from Herrera. It's a phenomenal strike, but
Real Salt
at the
Lake
same
did
time,
lose the game as well.
Let's remember what the goalkeeper's job is. It's supposed to be to make saves. Every time I hear a coach or a sport director or something, and the first thing they mention about a goalkeeper is how good they are with their feet, I just shake my head and I say, then put a center back in goal.
That's because we were terrible with our feet, Casey. That's why.
Lovely little bit with the goalkeepers union on tonight. Thanks so much for being with us, Casey. There'll be a lot more talk about the USA and about the Leagues Cup showcase, no doubt, on the latest edition of Football Americas. Make sure to always catch that. It's out twice a week on ESPN+. Following on from Eden Hazard playing well for Belgium against Wales in that 2-1 win in the Nations League, just taking a look at his game log this season, was obviously the last game being that game against Wales. And then when it comes to Real Madrid, as you can see, not too many minutes for him, just the 1 goal so far this season. He actually spoke about his playing time at club level after the game. He said, it's a delicate situation at Real Madrid because I want to play and I don't play. And when I play well. I've always said the old Eden Hazard will come back when he plays. I just need to get back into the rhythm. I want to get as many minutes as possible and be fit for the World Cup. What's your reaction to that quote from Hazard, Robbo?
Well, he can't get in the Real Madrid side because at the moment there's better players than him. You know, if he wants to play out on the right-hand side, Valverde's been excellent. Rodrigo has got more pace than him at the moment. You've got Benzema playing up front. You've got Vinicius Junior playing brilliantly. So where does Hazard fit in? When he was at his very best, he was one of the world's best players. And he had a burst of pace and a change of direction over the first 5 yards. He wasn't blisteringly quick over 20 yards, 30 yards, but over the first 5 or 6 yards with that low centre of gravity, he could twist and turn. He was brilliant at going at players, and he was outstanding. I have not seen that from Eden Hazard since he's been at Real Madrid, which is a massive shame because he could have been one of the stars of the World Cup for Belgium. He might still play well, but he's not going to be the player that he was when he first went to Real Madrid, and that's why he's not in the side.
So, Robbo, you differ somewhat from the player's assessment of his own game because he says when he plays well, but you wouldn't agree with that.
He plays okay. He's not a bad player. He's still obviously a good player. But he's not got the explosive power and pace and trickery of Vinicius Junior. He hasn't got Valverde's ability to go past people. Even when Asensio comes on, he makes more things happen and is more likely to score goals than Eden Hazard. Valverde making the forward runs and Rodrigo. So I just don't see where he gets into the side at the moment. You know, he's done okay when he comes on, but he's not been the blistering player he was when he was first ball.
Jules, do you think he has a point that he says if he plays more, he'll find his rhythm again and get back to his best?
Yeah, I want to believe that. The problem is when you're playing for the best team in the world, you don't have the luxury to ask for 5-6 games in a row. So you can go from strength to strength, and then after 5 or 6 games, be at your best. It just doesn't happen like that, and I think he knows it. He had his chance. Remember, he played well against Celtic in the Champions League when Benzema, at the beginning of the Benzema injury, and then he started the following La Liga game against Mallorca, and he didn't do anything. And I think this was his chance. Had he played well against Mallorca, had he scored, for example, and really been a key part of that team, then I think it would have been harder for Ancelotti to say, do you know what, I can't really drop him anymore. I need to play him again as that false nine role for the next game, and etc., etc. The problem is, if he doesn't have a good game when he starts, then straight away after that, you say, okay, well, I'm sorry, Eden, but I've got Rodrigo now who come in, and look at what Rodrigo has done since taking over from Hazard in replacement of Benzema. He's been outstanding, both in the league and in the Champions League. And after that, like Robo said, on the left is Vinicius' place, and on the right now is Valverde's place. So there's no room for Eden. But he had that chance this season, and he cannot deny it. He had that chance against Celtic, took it. He had to confirm it against Mallorca, and didn't do it. And after that, this is it. The trend is gone. Rodrigo comes in, he plays better than you. He will stay in that position until Benzema comes back.
Well, let's continue talking about players who've been on international action. Kylian Mbappe was on the score sheet for France against Austria. Front cover of L'Équipe saying much less blurry. It was Mbappe and Giroud with the goals in this one. And Mbappe actually did speak after the game about why things were going right for him. He said, I played differently with France. They asked me to do different things here than at PSG. Here I have much more freedom. The coach knows that we have Giroud as a 9 who occupies defences, and I can run into the spaces. In Paris, it's different. That doesn't exist. They asked me to play in the centre, and it's different. Jules, you're smiling as I read this, and I wonder if this is some type of shot at PSG, or if we're taking it out of context by even asking that.
No. This is the big controversy in France right now. I mean, since last night, really, since Kylian said that in the mix zone, and he knew exactly. And I think people who watch our show, we say enough that how intelligent he is, and that he never says anything without some sort of agenda behind it. And that was clearly the case. It was clearly the case on Thursday night, because he knew exactly the power of the words he was using and exactly what those kind of comments, what they would mean, after that. And now that's what we've been talking about in France all day today. It's about those comments. It's about obviously him saying, I don't like being the focal point like they asked me to do in PSG. Clearly, it's a bit of a dig at Neymar and Messi in the sense that, well, Neymar and Messi didn't play the role that I played for France, but I prefer that role as well. Look at tonight with France, how well I played. So, for example, I think in his mind, it's maybe like, why don't you play Ekitike at PSG, the young striker, like an Olivier Giroud focal point, and they're quite similar players, to be fair. And then I can be the one having a lot of freedom behind him with someone else next to me. So, with Griezmann for the national team, it would be Messi or Neymar for PSG. And then again, that reopens the debates and the whole thing about Kylian Mbappe, is the headlines, is like, is he really happy in Paris? Is he not happy at PSG? What does he really want? So who gets the sack if he plays behind a striker in that freedom role? Like we said, it'll be either Neymar or Messi because there's not room for Ekitike and Mbappe and Neymar and Messi either. So I don't think he can help himself. As good as Thursday night was for France, going back to winning ways, Mbappe scoring, Giroud scoring, a lot of positives from the game with some young players starting, etc., all of that. And yet, all we talk about after is Mbappe's comments.
So just to clarify, Jules, it is being read into as maybe Messi or Neymar would have to come out of the PSG squad for it to work the way he would want it to.
He's been read as, this is where I'm happy, that freedom role that I can have with a focal point as a striker, so Giroud for the national team. But then if you look at the PSG squad, it's really only Ekitike, the young 19-year-old. This is all, no one else can play in that position. So it was read as like, I would be much happier in Paris if I could play in a similar role and position than I did tonight with the national team, which is having not being me the focal point, but having someone else as the focal point at PSG, and I can be like a free player playing just around that focal point. And clearly, again, like we said for the national team, with Griezmann next to him, but for PSG with either Messi or Neymar next to him, and having the freedom that he had with the national team on Thursday. I think this is not just the way it was read. This is the way I think Kylian wanted people to read it, and that's why he said it. And also, this is the only way you can read it. There's no other way or any other excuse to find. This is exactly what he meant.
So bench Messi or Neymar, and Mbappe will be happy at PSG. Shaka.
You know when it would have been a good time to have this discussion? When Mbappe was discussing his new contract and the project. When that was the absolute perfect time to bring all this up and address that at the time. But fact remains, you've got Lionel Messi, you've got Neymar, and you've got Kylian Mbappe. All three have to start for PSG. And just by nature of having those three on the park, you have to give some direction, some rules, some rigidity. You cannot tell all three of those just play with a sense of freedom, because players will just be running between the three of them. They'll just be running everywhere. So you have to try and keep that within some kind of parameter. So I sympathize. I understand why maybe it's causing as much of a stir in France as it is. But for me, it's just the nature of the players that he is surrounded with, whether in the French national team or PSG, and how you have to play differently. And I don't see that as being major at all.
So does he have a point, Robbo?
Well, what I think he's saying, and I agree with Jules and I agree with Shaka, he's also saying that why should I be punished? And I wouldn't say playing at centre forward at PSG is a punishment, but why should I be punished and have to be disciplined when the other two obviously can't be disciplined and can't stick to what the game plan is? And because of that, I've got to do the role of the centre forward. I'd like to play where they play. As Shaka said, he should have discussed that when he was discussing his contract and whether he was going to stay or not. If I'm going to stay, I want to play this position. Or this is where I think I'm at my best. Obviously, Gaultier didn't agree with that.
There's a lot of talk about the French national team and everything that's going on in the latest Gab and Jules podcast. Be sure to catch that wherever you do get your podcasts. Make sure to catch San Jose against LA Galaxy Saturday 10 Eastern on ESPN Plus. That's in MLS. But for now, that will do it for the latest edition of ESPN FC. But the good news is we're not quite done yet, because Jules and Robbo will be back with Shaka to answer your questions in extra time. That's coming up right now. We'll see you there. Welcome into the latest edition of Extra Time. We have Jules, Robbo and Shaka. Actually, before we get into the questions, I just wanted to bring up, because we've been talking about Mbappe and Neymar and everything that's going on in PSG at the moment. After the Ghana game, Brazil's game against Ghana, Neymar was asked in the mix on, what's your relationship like with Mbappe? And then he's kind of like, I don't understand, sorry, what? And they're like, but Mbappe, what's your relationship like? And he goes, with Kylian, whew, I don't understand. I wonder if you saw that, Jules, and what you made of it.
He's a stirrer, goodness me.
Yeah, so I mean, he said, what, me and Kylian? And then he just went like, he almost rolled his eyes and just left without even saying anything. You know, I think that's a good summary of where they are right now. And you remember when Mbappe tried to say before the Juventus game, well, sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's hot between them. So sometimes they're really close and sometimes they're not so close. I think it's fair to say that right now it's pretty cold.
Who do you think gets on better, Neymar and Mbappe or Gab and Jules?
Gab and Jules for sure. Me and Gab.
I thought you'd roll your eyes, Jules. You like just like Neymar did.
To be fair, Jules has more holidays than Neymar.
Yeah, true.
No, he's on those holidays with Neymar, going all the parties, isn't he? Anyway, when you played and had a bad run of form, did the constant negativity from fans, media, and even your own coaches affect how you played? What was the best strategy to not let the negativity affect you, Shaka?
Go back to absolute basics. I mean, and it was very different back in old day, obviously without social media. You just had to avoid the tabloids and the back pages, so it was easier in that respect. But in terms of getting your form back, just do the very simple things. And the old cliche, let your first pass for all three players be a 5-yard pass. Make sure and just connect that and just build slowly from there. Don't try anything extravagant off the bat. Back
to basics, Robbo.
Yeah, work harder. Make sure you get in my day, get more tackles in, run harder, run faster, and then your form would come back. You know, because the crowd would get behind you. They'd see you giving 100%, and they'd get behind you. You'd play better. You get your confidence back, and then you'd be a good player again. That's how you have to do it. Work harder.
Jules, what do you think is next for Didier Deschamps after the World Cup? Does he stay on with France, take time off, or go back into club management after the season? If it is the latter, where would you like to see him go?
It's a really good question. We know that kind of had some discussions already with the federation, and we know how close he is to the head of the French FN, Le Gret, who he's under pressure himself and in big trouble. I think a lot will depend on how the World Cup goes. If it's a successful World Cup, so let's say they go really far or even win it, I think he will be tempted to stay until the Euros in Germany in 2024 because, well, I mean, one, the dynamic and the momentum will be amazing, and two, because the next generation, and we saw Badiashile and Fofana and Saliba again on Thursday night doing really well with the national team, so he knows that the next one coming, the next generation, is so good that he should keep winning really, or still being really good, and that could tempt him to stay. And I think if he wants to stay and if the World Cup is good, the federation will keep him anyway. If the World Cup doesn't go well, then I think they're not going to renew his contract, so his contract will finish in December of this year. And then after that, I think he might take a bit of time off, and then I don't know if he will go back to club level. The pressure is so different. Let's not forget that, he's been with the national team since 2012 now. This is a very long time. It's 10 years and potentially even 12 if he goes up to Euro 2024. And after that, I don't know if he can go back to club level, daily pressure, daily expectations in a way. So I don't know if he would want that, but I think there will be club after him for sure if he decides to go back to club level. I'm just not too convinced that that's the path he will take.
And most importantly, he's keeping Mbappe happy, Jules.
It's always the key anyway. It's not always the key, but he's France's best player anyway. So at PSG, you can argue that, okay, you want to be happy, but we have Neymar, we have Messi. You might not be the best one here. With the national team, he's the best and by far. So in a way, you have a happy Mbappe will mean France doing well. There's no question, and I think Deschamps knows that. And I think it's pretty clear for everybody within the squad, within the staff, within the environment of the national team, even with us covering the national team, it's pretty clear. So it's a different dynamic, but for Deschamps, for sure, his relationship and Kylian's happiness is very important for the way the team is doing.
Now, Robbo, I know that you're keen on seeing Spain in this World Cup. You think they could cause a few problems, but we've had a question here saying, why are people sleeping on Uruguay this World Cup? They have a great team with Araujo, Valverde, Núñez, Bentancur, Jimenez, and old guards like Godin, Suarez, and Cavani, among others.
Yes, they can be a very good side, but if you look at their results, they haven't always beaten the best sides. I think sometimes they can be too negative, so they won't go and attack the opposition. I hope they are a good side at the World Cup because they're always good to watch. They're always got great support. And when we were in Brazil, following Uruguay was one of the best experiences. So let's hope they have a good World Cup, but I still don't think they're going to get anywhere past maybe the last 16.
For Shaka.
They lost to Iran today.
Yes, they lost to Iran
average,
today. Yeah. For Shaka, does Portugal exist?
All right. I missed out some data for my top 10. I admit as much. Portugal were 11th for my top 10.
He had a bad holiday once when he went to Portugal. That's why he didn't put them in the group.
What have you got against?
I've never been to Portugal.
Well, there you go. That's just proof that you've got something against them.
That's right. I've never been to Portugal. If I got a free trip to Portugal, they'll be in my top 5.
Just in case anything. Hang on a minute.
For the tourism office to invite you.
Are you trying to become an influencer?
I've left that to Dan. I've left being an influencer to Dan. I can't do Dan.
What does Dan try and influence then?
I can't influence Dan.
What does Dan try and influence then?
Oh goodness! Dan got some free suits and posted himself on Instagram.
See what you're missing on social media, Stuart. There were some wonderful poses from Dan.
Too big for him. I bet they were miles too big for him.
Let me tell you something. It was cringeworthy to cry for. That's as good as I can describe it.
Oh dear. All I can remember, he came on a La Liga show with that orange shirt on. It was the worst shirt I think I've ever seen on ESPN FC.
Oh, you need to see his new stuff. He's got his name inside it also.
Oh yeah, he's got his name inside his suits now. He even asked Shaka to peel a grape for him the other day.
Let me tell you something. Oh God, please no.
Yeah, I have to clean this seat after I've been on it and everything. You wouldn't believe it. All right, Shaka. I am wondering how some teams from outside the top 5 European leagues get into your power rankings, when in reality, a team in the top 5 with poorer results can beat them easily. Which factor weighs more, team form or the league it's playing?
Well, as we now know which countries are visited. Who decides to extend a free trip, that's very key to my rankings.
Times the algorithm equals.
Exactly. Listen, especially early on in the season, I like to, give some love to these teams that won't be there later on. So especially if a smaller team in a smaller league starts well, I'm going to put them in because I know come January, February, they're not going to be there.
All right. I mean, you actually had a huge agreement tonight on one of your power rankings, which may be a first, right?
I think it's a good time to retire now from all rankings.
No, don't try and get away from the power rankings.
It's the first time anybody's agreed with my rankings.
Yes.
Let alone 2 people at the same time.
So now you can set. Now this is the start of a good run of form.
No, that was quit.
No,
while,
it's the
quit while
perfect
they're
time.
ahead.
Let's keep going with Shaka's power rankings. He loves doing them.
Well,
He puts so much effort into them.
Let's see what free trips I get out of.
Yeah, calling on the Portuguese tourist pod. Go on,
Let me
Robbo.
tell you, he's got the nicest people to actually judge his power rankings. I'm not going to give him any stick. Jules isn't going to give him any stick.
not Jules. Oh, Jules. Jules gets all angry. Jules gets all angry. So funny.
All right, question for Jules. Does Jules think Dembele could break into France's starting 11 for the World Cup?
No, unless the system changes. The system as it is right now is not made for Ousmane Dembele, as good as he is with Barcelona, and I think as important as he is in that French squad, because he's got a lot of talent, of course, but also a lot of friends within that squad. But right now, the way France are playing with the back three and Griezmann as a 10, really behind the two strikers who will be Benzema and Mbappe, or were Giroud and Mbappe on Thursday night against Austria, there's no room for Dembele. For Dembele, you kind of have to change the system, and maybe you can play with sort of two attacking players behind a striker, and in that case then maybe you play Kylian a bit deeper and Ousmane a bit deeper. Ousmane used to play centrally. He used to be a 10 really before becoming a winger, because he had so much space, and so many skills that he was also made to be a very good winger. But I think he can play a bit more centrally. But right now, in Deschamps' mind, there's not a space in that formation, in that system, that really naturally fit Ousmane Dembele, unfortunately.
Just before we do go, Robbo brought this up and made the comparison of Gab and Jules being the Neymar and Mbappe of podcasting. You are one of the stand-ins quite often, Robbo. Which of the two do you prefer working with?
Oh.
Listen, when I work
You're
with
kind of
Gab,
like Messi here. You're kind of like Messi here, no, Robbo.
First of all, you have to have the questions given to you the night before. Well, Gab never does that, so he's got me. He catches me on the hop when I get in and says, "Oh, we're going to talk about some story I've never heard of." Whereas Jules is very nice. He texts me the night before. I sit up all night watching all the videos, and I get into the studio, so we know what we're going to talk about. And when I'm with Jules, I actually get a chance to speak. When I'm with Gab, I'm just a stooge, really. I'm just there. So make your own mind up.
You know what? So what the answer would have been for Robbo is, how's your relationship with Marcotti? And he'd go, Gabriele.
Don't
just leave the mix out.
Don't speak English. My English is not so good.
I just wind him up by calling him Gabrielle. That winds him up enough.
Yeah, don't do that. Or just get your steak well done. That'll really wind him up. Anyway, that's all we've got time for.
Order steak well done. Just order steak well done delivered.
Thanks so much for your questions. We'll see you again tomorrow.